Sophomore Cal Poly tennis player and Zimbabwe native Kimberley Bhunu is coming off of a season-ending injury, tearing her ACL and meniscus, but now she's feeling better than ever. Cal Poly women's tennis is still undefeated this season.
So it was a really long road. Now I feel like I'm back stronger. I'm more mentally strong, more appreciative of the sport.
But the journey to get to the Central Coast was a lot of hard work and dedication. She spent her high school years in France at Mouratoglou Tennis Academy. The academy is ran by Serena Williams' coach.
Play more competitive matches because it was not as high of a level in Zimbabwe. They gave me a part scholarship, so I ended up going there when I was 14.
So at 14 years old, Bhunu left her life in Zimbabwe and went 7,328 miles away to pursue her passion as a tennis player.
Didn't really appreciate home as much until I went there. So it was hard to leave home, but it was also a really good experience.
And now she's living out that dream as a tennis player at Cal Poly, but this time 10,274 miles away from home.
Coming here, it was like completely different atmosphere. I have no relatives close by. And it was like a huge culture shock because like SLO is not very diverse. That has been hard, but I have like a good support here and good family that I've made here.
The Mustangs waited over 350 days to play tennis again this season. She says that the goal for this team is to make the NCAA tournament.
I feel like that's something we've been working for. I think we have a really good team this year and really good team dynamics, so I really hope that we'll be able to make it to the NCAAs.
That's all for sports. Back to you in studio.
Well, tax filing season is in full swing. Coming up, how the new economic stimulus plan could help parents by changing a tax credit.
Well, as California Attorney General Javier Becerra faces tough questions on the first day of his Senate confirmation hearings today.
So save it. You might need it.
An update tonight. Former top law enforcement officials were grilled today on their response to the deadly January 6th attack on Capitol Hill. Alice Barr has more on the first in a series of Senate hearings.
That the testimony you will give before this
testifying publicly for the first time since last month's deadly siege on the U.S. Capitol.
These criminals came prepared for war.
Former law enforcement officials grilled by senators about how an angry mob was able to overrun what is supposed to be one of the most secure buildings in the world.
We must have the facts.
Former U.S. Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund, who resigned after the attack, blaming bad intelligence for how unprepared his department was for the level of violence that killed one officer.
We properly planned for a mass demonstration with possible violence. What we got was a military-style coordinated assault on my officers and a violent takeover of the Capitol building.
Former Chief Sund and the House and Senate sergeants at arms, who also resigned, all testified they did not see an FBI alert sent the day before the attack, warning that extremists were calling for war at the Capitol. Sund revealing today his intelligence division received the FBI bulletin but didn't pass it up the chain of command. Once the violence began, D.C. Metropolitan Police responded, and the acting chief testified he was stunned by how long it took to mobilize the National Guard.
Chief Sund was pleading for the deployment of the National Guard, and in response to that, there was not an immediate yes. The National Guard is responding.
The sergeants at arms disputed the former chief's timeline for when he first requested the troops, senators asking for phone records to clear it up. Blame and pain at just the beginning of a high-stakes search for answers. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Senators are also calling for better training and equipment for Capitol Police, as the former chief revealed many officers had not been equipped with riot gear or trained in how to respond to a mass intrusion.
In his first 100 days in office, President Joe Biden met with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Top cabinet officials from both countries participated in the virtual meeting today, including Canadian Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and Vice President Kamala Harris. The discussion centered on the partnership roadmap for the future of the Canada-U.S. relationship.
The new stimulus bill could make raising a child less expensive. Joe St. George breaks down what is being considered and how it could help combat child poverty.
Being a parent is expensive. A recent study by the Department of Agriculture found the cost of raising a child through age 17 is now $233,610 on average. But parents more help could be on the way.
Well, the possibility for more stimulus checks receives the most headlines. The new stimulus bill, for the moment, includes an expansion of the child tax credit. And if you're a parent out there, that has the potential to make a big difference.
Under the proposal in Congress, parents of children who are 5 and under would qualify for a tax credit worth $3,600 per child. Parents of children who are 17 and under would qualify for a $3,000 per child credit. That's on average a $1,000 increase per child from current laws. And while the increased credit phases out for couples making more than $150,000 a year, that number could change before the final bill is signed into law.
The persistence of child poverty in America is really a national disgrace.
Tazra Mitchell is a policy advisor with the D.C. Fiscal Institute and says the biggest change is lawmakers are considering making some of the money available in monthly installments, like a monthly stimulus check, if you will. Mitchell says the point of that is to address child poverty in our country.
With each month, you would get a check that would help you make ends meet, put food on the table, and provide for your child.
Recent studies by the federal government show at least 14% of U.S. children live in poverty. That's over 10 million kids. Mitchell used to be part of that statistic.
My brother, my dad, and I, we were living in a motel, and thankfully it was tax season, and that was the only reason why we didn't end up in a shelter.
Right now on Capitol Hill, there's debate whether this extra money should be for just this year or permanent for years to come. Expect more on this in the coming days. The House of Representatives is set to vote on the latest stimulus bill by the end of the week. In Washington, I'm Joe St. George.
California Attorney General Javier Becerra faced tough questions at his confirmation hearing today. Becerra is President Biden's pick for Health and Human Services Secretary. Republicans have been building a case against Becerra because of his support for Medicare for All and health rights for undocumented immigrants. He's also overseen much of California's response to the COVID pandemic, which has made him a target due to school closures and lockdowns. Becerra's view of that experience is that it has prepared him to lead the nation's response.
I understand the enormous challenges before us and our solemn responsibility to faithfully steward this agency that touches almost every aspect of our lives. I'm humbled by the task, and I'm ready for it.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell called Becerra a, quote, radical and underqualified nominee. If confirmed, Becerra would be the first Latino to run the HHS.
President Biden's Interior Secretary nominee, Deb Haaland, also went through a confirmation hearing today. The New Mexico Congresswoman appeared before the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. She stated a commitment to strike the right balance in managing energy development while restoring and protecting federal land.
I know how important oil and gas revenues are to critical services, but we must also recognize that the energy industry is innovating, and our climate challenge must be addressed.
Some Republicans are against her nomination, saying her opposition to drilling on federal lands will cost jobs and harm local economies. If confirmed, the 60-year-old would become the first Native American to lead a cabinet agency.
The U.S. Senate confirmed Linda Thomas Greenfield to be the next U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Greenfield's confirmation comes less than a week before the United States assumes leadership of the UN Security Council in March. She was one of President Biden's first national security team picks.
In the latest tonight, Buckingham Palace is updating the public about Prince Philip's health. In a statement, they say the husband of Queen Elizabeth is being treated for an infection. He is not expected to leave the hospital for several days after arriving there last Tuesday. At the time, a source said that doctors were acting with an abundance of caution. The Duke of Edinburgh is comfortable and currently responding to treatment. He turns 100 years old in June.
A new program could change how Black history is taught in schools. Coming up, here from the founders of the organization Black History 365, which provides resources for teachers nationwide.
And Boeing is investigating dozens of planes after an engine malfunction on a flight from Denver to Honolulu.
Starting in August, some schools across the country will have the option to teach Black history differently to give a more inclusive context. Dan Grossman spoke with students who were key to its development.
We are going to change the world.
When Janelle Nenga speaks, her self-actualization flourishes.
BH365 has given us the baton to run in this generational marathon towards humanity and racial equity.
A confidence, a realization, knowing despite her age, she and her peers can affect change.
I don't think that we're different students, I just think that we're more empowered than we were, and we have more power in our voices.
We first met these students back in September.
Now, when we talk about slavery, we're not talking about one trauma or one specific event.
When they were using those voices in a weekly podcast that gave context to issues that affect them daily.
A lot of people had told me that I was never going to be successful, I was going to drop out by the time I was 16, and that maybe I wouldn't even make it to 16. But here I am, 16, making a change this big to, that's crazy.
That podcast is now part of a new course called Black History 365 that looks to give a more inclusive history of Black race and culture.
And we liken it to an educational earthquake that's rolling gently across the nation.
Dr. Joel Freeman helped develop it alongside Dr. Walter Milton when they felt what is taught in schools already isn't enough, that it starts and ends with slavery and civil rights.
A lot of it came, the core of it came from our personal experiences. Mine started back in 4th grade when I believed that it was important to really get this out to all the students across the land because of a really bad experience I had when a teacher said that she was going to teach Black history, but she started with the benign institution of slavery.
The new course will delve into African history, Haitian history, and prominent figures who emerged, hoping to create a platform for students to discuss critical issues that affect our country today.
It really changed my perspective on history, how I'm learning in my classroom, and how I feel about history class.
While also giving them a platform to get to a place these students have already.
We're going to be clearing misconceptions, facing the oppressor, and progressing as a human race.
I'm Dan Grossman reporting.
Chief Meteorologist Dave Hovde will join us once again with a full microclimate weather forecast for the Central Coast. But first, this is a look at Cayucas from earlier today, thanks to surfline.com.